Here we go. Says we're live.
All right. Well, hello there, Broncos country. And it's again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I'm your host, Carl Dumler. And of course, joining me as usual, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, doing pretty well. Had a fantastic weekend with one of my good friends. Did some fishing. Caught ourselves. I pulled in a over 5-pound bass, and that was honestly not that big of a fight, but it was a good time. Did some camping, and looks like it's going to be rainy and dreary the rest of the week. So happy to get that vitamin D this last week, and ready for football to tide me over. Although with the CBA, who knows what's going to happen.
There you go. Yeah, no, I was doing the exact opposite. I was not having fun. I was throwing a sledgehammer into a ceiling over and over again.
That can be fun.
Yeah. It wasn't as fun when the head of the sledgehammer went flying. Yeah, I don't know what we did, but anyway, got a ceiling down in the basement. That'll be the next project in the next couple days, put that back up. So it's kind of nice to get a little break, come talk some football with all my favorite people. And so beyond just talking to you guys today, make sure you're following us on Twitter. You can find me at Carl Dumler MHH and Nick Kendell MHH. You can follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. And make sure you leave us a comment or a rating wherever you're listening to podcasts. And also head on over to milehighhuddle.com of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated, because we have lots of stuff coming out. Free agency starting soon. CBA is going crazy. Yeah, lots going on. So make sure you're heading over there. Also know that this podcast is powered by Overtime Media. So everyone, we kind of thought today we would look at some of the top free agents that have kind of been mentioned towards the Broncos and give our yay or nay of whether we think that they would be a good fit for the Broncos. And we're kind of doing a little guessing work because contracts are, you have an idea and then free agency happens and everything goes out the window of logic. Mm-hmm. I don't know what teams are thinking, but all of a sudden everybody's like, I got money, let me throw it at you. So, but we'll kind of take some guesses here. And then if you guys have anybody that we kind of like, that you'd like us to talk about, any players, let us know in the comments or any other questions. Of course, there's plenty going on. But anyway, so let's talk some free agency here, some buy and sell options. And let's start with Mr. Amari Cooper, wide receiver for Dallas, a guy that we've talked about a few times on here as somebody that we kind of like as a fit for the Broncos. He's a great route runner. He can get himself open in a hurry, has a pretty proven record. He's a little inconsistent. His hands are not always the best, but he is about everything you're looking for in a wide receiver. But the way it's kind of sounding right now, contract-wise, we're looking at, 18, 19 million a year, possibly? Yeah. Which just seems kind of crazy, especially when you're talking about the wide receiver market for the draft. So, Nick, buy or sell?
I buy Amari Cooper, but I sell him at that price. I feel like he's probably going to reset the wide receiver market. One thing I don't think people appreciate enough about Amari Cooper is he's still just 25 years old. He's already about to reach free agency, get that second contract, the same age when the Broncos took Garrett Bowles in the first round. I mean, he still has a lot of good years left. Arguably, his best years still ahead of him. He can win at Z. He can win in the slot. And also, he's an explosive receiver. He's one of the best 3 route runners in football. And that's not just, Cooper Kupp's a good route runner. Well, he's running slot routes. Lottie freaking da. I know there's some value to that, but not compared to somebody who can win vertically or up the seam like Amari Cooper can. So, or Stephon Diggs, etc. So I really like Amari Cooper. I think he would fit this team well. They're not spending a lot of money on offense right now, so they could do that. But at $18 to $19 million a year, with some injuries issues with him, up and down play, especially in a good wide receiver class, I probably punt. But I will say, if there's anybody you're going to look back up the Brinks truck Drew in this offseason cycle, it might be Cooper, because there's not a tackle that makes sense. I don't think that Joe Thuney is a better guard than Cooper is a wide receiver. And also Cooper still has more obtainable upside. So a guy who's been limited in places that he's gone. I mean, Dak Prescott's okay. Derek Carr's okay, but neither of those teams have had another dynamic weapon wide receiver opposite him. So I had some Cowboy fans saying Michael Gallup had a better year. Well, that's because freaking Amari Cooper's taken the number one and a safety with him every single play, so everyone else can eat. So,
right,
18 million a year scares me.
Yeah, and that's just it. You have to always think of wide receivers of what they do for others. It's not always about the numbers they put up, because there's a lot of times I always think of, I mean, I know he still put up numbers, Calvin Johnson, but there was a lot of plays he was triple covered, and they'd still throw it up. Because Matthew Stafford's just one of those guys. He's not afraid to go throw it to his playmakers. But still, it's one of those where if he's taken 3 guys, that means somebody else has single coverage. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like Cortland Sutton, his rookie year, after the Broncos started trading some players and Emmanuel Sanders got hurt, and all of a sudden he became the number one, and you saw his numbers kind of drop down. Well, it was kind of teams going, anybody else beat us. And this past year, it was still kind of the same thing of anybody else beat us. Now, he did have a little bit of help from Noah Fant in a couple games. And of course, I mean, Drew Lock had his moments, and Hamilton started playing a little better there at the end of the year. I don't know if you'd say playing better, maybe just a quarterback that was willing to actually trust him again. But still, it was kind of Cortland Sutton getting double, triple teamed and everybody else. And so, if you can bring in another guy that makes teams have to game plan of who do we cover? Who do we put our safety help on? And it helps when you got more weapons. I mean, it's the Chiefs. That's who the Broncos are trying to emulate, of course. And when they have Tyreek Hill, when they have Travis Kelce, when they have Hardman,
Watkins,
when they have all those weapons, yes, they have a great quarterback, but it also helps how many people they have to try to cover on the field. So yeah, it's what the Broncos need. But you're right, at that 18, 19 million,
especially in a good wide receiver class.
Right. I'm sorry. That's a pass for me. And I've seen a couple other names thrown out here for like wide receiver, like Taylor Gabriel. That would be a nice option that I don't think is going to break the bank.
I liked him more in the last offense because we had both him and Marquise Goodwin. We knew that they fit in that Skingarello, Kyle Shanahan offense. This new one, I'm not sure the fit is as clean, but he would bring a cheap speed option at wide receiver that this team is lacking. So definitely a bad approach.
Yeah. But I wanted to get to the question before it disappears on us here. Amaro 1983. I really appreciate the donation here, and always love the question. Carl, always wondered, what type of church do you preach at? Keep up the great work, gentlemen. # biggest Bronco fan, Ponca City, Oklahoma. There you go. Nice.
Boomer, maybe. Or go Pokes. I don't know. Either way, I'm in one of my demographics.
All right. Well, I work at an independent Christian church. And so that essentially means I have no hierarchy above me other than the leadership here at the church kind of thing. So it's kind of nice in some ways, bad in other ways, but it's a really good group here. Love it. So, yep, I hope that answers your question there. Some people, whenever I say that, they're like, what do you mean? I've never heard of that before. But,
so before we get to the next guy, I want to just highlight a couple of these ones. You can start getting ready for the next one. First off, I love this name. Nick Kendall's #1 stan with the devil smiley. So talking about the church, I guess we'll have the opposite there on my end. The devil smiley. Malik Collins is an interesting name. That's not one on our list, but we can talk about him later. Here's one that's interesting to me. Why would we not tender Derek Wolfe, or are we done with him? Broncos couldn't tender Derek Wolfe either way. He's not a player that you're going to put a transition tag or a franchise tag on, and he's not, he didn't earn any of the first or the second round, first round, or original draft pick tenders. So he's a free agent. The Broncos have approached him. It seems to be kind of hit or miss right now if he does return. But, he's somebody that I think the Broncos are interested in bringing back, but only at the right price. So we'll see. I think that he's going to be one that he's going to go out there and test the market. And if they like what they see, they'll bring him back. But if not, thank you for your years in Denver. You'll be missed. But there's other defensive linemen they can target this year. Right.
That's just it. Is the nice thing for the Broncos is because there's so many defensive linemen that are going to be available. Mm-hmm. It is kind of, you throw out your contract and you say, okay, you don't want that. We'll just offer it to the next guy on our list. Yep. And then the next guy. And you just kind of, you don't have to sit there and go crazy, except for maybe the couple top guys that, of course, are going to get the big contracts. And so it is kind of this is the the bad side of football, I guess, is the contracts and having to worry about the salary cap and how that's going to go. And because I'd love for Derek Wolfe to finish his career with the Broncos, and I hope he does. But they got to meet him at the right price.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, our next guy on our buy or sell list here, I just did a couple wide receivers here. So the next guy, Robbie Anderson, again, all these projections, unless I say otherwise, are from Spot Track. They have a market value. They have Robbie Anderson's market value at 12 APY, so 12 million a year for 4 years and about 48 million. I'm sorry, I'm all the way out on Robbie Anderson. I know he brings a speed element to his game, but I think he's rather one-dimensional. And I think he has had multiple arrest warrants in Florida and has been all around known as an odd dude. So don't sign me up for that. Again, talking about this wide receiver market, if he could be had at 6 million at half that price, I'd be interested. But I just think he's a limited player, a vertical boundary player, and he's just, again, the personality scares me. So I'm out on Robbie Anderson.
Yep. No, I'm there with you. You're right. He's pretty one-sided in what he brings to the table. Now, what he brings to the table is nice, and he does make teams have to respect it. But if that's all they have to do is respect the deep speed, that's why we keep talking about how big Henry Ruggs is because he's more than just a deep threat. He brings so much more to the table as a player, and where teams have to worry about him going on the field. And that's the same with Amari Cooper. That's why he's worth so much more, is because he brings so much more to the table. And you have this next guy on our list here, Brashad Perriman. Yeah, I'd rather go get him. If you're only wanting a deep threat option, he's going to be a lot cheaper option and still bring a very similar skill set or ability to the field.
Yeah, and he's only projected only 8.7 APY, but a 2-year deal for 17 million. So you don't really have the guarantees on there where if he turns out to be a bust of a signing, you're not paying for it 3 years down the road, and you have a lot of dead cap where you have to move on. So definitely somebody, I agree with you. I'd be more interested in him personally.
And wanted to get to Manny Wise here. Really appreciate you coming in with a donation. And any chance CeeDee Lamb drops to the Broncos at 15? Yes. The top 3 wide receivers, the order, I think it's going to be different for every team.
Pick your flavor of ice cream.
I mean, I've seen some pretty top-end people in the draft community talking about Henry Ruggs being the first wide receiver off the board.
Yep.
But there's going to be a lot of teams that like him. Cecil Lamney just talked about how the Broncos have to trade up. Benjamin Albright just talked about how he's starting to hear that the Broncos are probably going to have to trade up if they want Henry Ruggs. And so if CeeDee Lamb is that third wide receiver taken, there's a good chance that he'll be there at 15. And he's kind of a little bit different skill set. So it's kind of depending on what you need as a team, because he is very different than the other 2 wide receivers. And so, if he's there at 15, you know how excited I would be. I mean, he's still my boy.
He's not your number one.
Even if I know he's not my number one, but he's still my boy. Just because I love his game. I love watching him play. He just, you can tell he loves the game, works hard, and it doesn't matter how much teams try to stop him if he's not getting stopped.
And I think he had the second best 10-yard split of any of the wide receivers at the combine. So I know he ran a 4.5 40, which didn't wow people. Yeah. But when he had the second best 10-yard splits and the ability that he shows on tape, I mean that's saying something. There's some tools there. So don't. Right. He's not running 4.2 like Ruggs, and Ruggs had the best 10-yard split. Okay, go figure.
Right.
But Lamb is a good player.
And I always think of like Cortland Sutton. You look at his 40 time, it didn't show an explosive athlete. But you look at some of his other drills that he did, they show very much that he is an explosive athlete and what he can bring to the field. And so while it's not going to be the deep speed that's going to cause a lot of separation, he's not going to be the guy that's going to take a swing pass and probably take it 80 yards running away from everybody like a Henry Ruggs can. He still brings an incredible skill set to the field and brings some great athleticism. I mean, there's reasons why, even though everybody knew he was top player on the field, that he still found ways to get open. I mean, I've went back and watched him, and it is amazing how many times he gets open. And you're going, there's 3 guys, and they're all still not able to keep up with him.
Yeah, and what I like about all three of the top guys is they all bring yak ability in different ways. So I wanted to clear out some of these questions here in the back, and we don't want to forget anybody, but we have Robert Caslow here. Is Thune worth an attempt to get? We'll talk about that soon, Robert, but wanted to acknowledge you before if you had to go or anything. One of my favorite Abbeys here, the tatted up, blonde-haired Hank Hill from Chase Wellner. I saw Bosby's agent is currently talking with the Broncos. Great move by Elboy if he's retained without using a tender. Agreed. I mean, that tender, Bosby flashed last year, but it's still a very small sample size, and he's a guy who hasn't done much in the league. So paying him $2 million, I think that risk is something. The more I step away from it, at first it seemed like, well, duh, you bring back Bosby, but $2 million, if you can save yourself $1 million there, I mean, that could be the difference between a punter or the level of backup offensive lineman you can get, which matters. So I definitely think that's a good move. Josh Gordon's also here. We got another question here from Sterling Donovan. Do you think we should pick up Josh Gordon after hearing the NFL isn't suspending anyone for failing THC tests anymore? Probably not. I think that's a guy who's had a lot of issues, and it's not. I have no issue with that test. Get rid of the test, but it comes down to and maybe it spells a deeper issue there, a deeper question with him. So probably I'll let somebody else take that.
Yeah.
So,
well, we were kind of talking about this earlier. Yordi Lopez, what do you guys think it would cost the Broncos to trade up with the Browns or Jets to take Henry Ruggs?
A good indicator would be, I believe it was the Arizona Cardinals were picking at 15 just a few years ago, and they traded up to 10 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to get Josh Rosen. And that required pick 15, a third-round pick, and a fifth-round pick. So if you can give up, the Broncos have extra third-round picks, and if you can give up that and a fifth to go up and get the guy that you want the most, I think it's not the worst idea. Obviously, this is a good draft to have top 100 picks in, but if that's the difference between getting your wide receiver one or, having to settle for a, third wide receiver on your board and you like one much better than the other for the fit, I don't think it's the biggest deal giving up a third round pick. I don't love it, but I also understand it. So I'm not going to give you a hot take here in that regard. I think there's merits either way.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And always, any kind of trade, it's always going to be relative to how many teams are bidding and what kind of players are there.
Yep.
And so
quarterbacks fuck things up.
Right. So, but that was for a quarterback. So you think, right. But you'd think because it is a quarterback, that is kind of a pretty good indicator of what it's going to take for the Broncos to get there. And so I wouldn't mind that trade up. I've talked about it before of, I like to go get your guys. Quality, a lot of the top drafting teams, because they know probably 70% of their draft picks are going to be busts or special teams contributors at best. And so they try to spread it out as much as possible. But again, here at the top part of the draft, if there's a guy you really like that you think is going to be that much of a difference maker, and I do think Henry Ruggs, because he affects so much on the field, it's not – I think you just sent us an article earlier today about how Henry Ruggs could be the biggest difference in the run game, more than say go getting like a Derrick Henry or anything like that. Just because when those safeties have to stay backed off, it opens up so much more in the run game.
The biggest indicator of rushing efficiency and rushing success is the number of players in the box. So if you have Cortland Sutton on one side and Henry Ruggs on the other, how many players are you going to allow to have in the box? 5, 6, 7, definitely no 8 or 9 man boxes. Otherwise you're getting killed.
Right.
So again, it's a space game, how you can manipulate defensive players and create space. That's what it's about. So a couple more questions. I just want to, we had Sterling again, Chris Clark talking about any centers worth looking at. And what are the chances the Broncos re-sign McGovern? That's something we'll talk about here soon, but we should probably keep moving on some of these players. So you were out on Cooper and Anderson, but you were tentatively in buying on Bashard Perryman at the 8.7.
It's not my favorite cost, but at the same time, if you're looking just for a speed element and you don't think you're going to get Henry Ruggs in the draft, then I don't mind that kind of move. Yeah. Like say you have Perryman and then say Lamb is that third wide receiver taken, or let's say you go to the second round to get a wide receiver as well. I don't know, Rager, something like that. Then at least it gives you some options that do space things out. The teams do have to respect a lot of speed on the field and worry about what's going to happen. It's not my favorite option, but it's one that I could definitely understand why they do it.
Yeah. So moving on here, I got some cornerbacks coming up. First one, Spot Track has Byron Jones only at 14.1 per year, 5 years, 71 million. Carl, I'd be shocked if Byron Jones only got 14 million. I would buy on him at 14 million.
Yes, please.
But I think even after getting Boye,
yeah,
but I think he's going to get closer to 16 to 18, maybe even 19. So for what I'm thinking, I think I would be out on what I believe his value will be.
Yeah.
So,
no, I'm with you. Yeah, at 14.1, it's still an expensive secondary, but he's that good of a player that price is not too bad. I've heard that the starting price is 17 million.
Yeah.
So
I grain of salt there.
Yeah, and even the next guy that you have on the list here, James Bradbury, I've been hearing closer to 14, 15 million for him. Yeah. So I do feel like they're a little bit low on some of these top end cornerbacks. The rest of them, I could actually see halfway, most of them. But the Byron Jones one, when I saw that, I was like, nah, that's not going to happen. No, but you're right. At 17 million, no, I can't do it. 14.1 million, I'm biting the bullet, going ahead and doing that one. James Bradbury, you have it at 12 million a year.
I'd be interested, but I feel like after Boye, either pay Jones or don't. I'd rather be getting the next couple guys here, a couple that have been listed with the Broncos potentially. Prince Amukamara, about 7 to 8 million per year, or Darquez Denard from Cincinnati, about 7 to 9 million APY. Younger player, former first-round pick. Both those guys would interest me a lot. I'm looking to pay hopefully 6 to 7 instead of 7 to 9, but either way, I think both those guys make more sense than paying the huge money for Byron Jones or James Bradbury. So I would buy on those two options.
I think that's where the Broncos are going to be looking. And I don't think that they're done spending on the cornerback position. I know Bosby is an option, but I think there's still another bigger name option that's going to be coming through, like a Prince Amukamara. It does sound like that is somebody that is interested in being with the Broncos, and the Broncos have interest in him. So it would not shock me one bit if that's the next deal that gets done for the Broncos. And Denard hasn't quite lived up to the hype of obviously a first-round pick. Otherwise, he'd be getting signed by Cincinnati right now. But for a number 2 cornerback, you can live with it for a couple years.
He's been exceptional in slot also.
Yeah.
Like exceptional in slot. One of our good friends, Joe Goodberry, who we had on the pod last year to talk Drew Lock, gosh, that would have been back in February last year. But he had the statistics of Denard in boundary versus slot, and he's actually one of the top 5 slot cornerbacks in football over the past few seasons. So we know that Fangio likes those versatile guys and the ones that can tackle in space, and Denard can do that pretty well. So actually, we should probably hit the we have one here from Paul. Gosh, Paul the guy. Do you see a day one free agent splash for the Broncos? This is hair gel money for Carl.
That's right.
Great pod. I don't have anything in my hair. I just got out of the shower because I was working out, so that's probably
all natural.
A little wet there. But,
I'm not.
I think the Broncos could see a day one splash for them. I guess the question would be, who is the most likely day one splash for you?
I would say a defensive lineman.
Give me a name.
Well, I guess I'll go DJ Reader. I think he's a day one. He's not going to be the top end day one player, but he's still going to be probably a day one signing.
Yep. I definitely agree with you.
So yeah, I do think that there's a lot of interest by the Broncos there, and he fits a lot of what they're looking for on the defensive line of size, ability to get a little bit after the quarterback. He's not perfect at it by any means, but great in the run game, can play nose tackle, can play defensive end. They can do a lot of things with him. And so I do think that would be the guy that I could realistically see the Broncos going after.
I'm going to go with Joe Schobert. I don't love paying linebackers $10 million, $11 million a year, but I think there's a decent amount of smoke there. The Broncos like to play their linebackers in coverage, in space, and Schobert has been really good. They're not the best tackler, but again, you're playing with house money when you have the picks the Broncos have, the cap space the Broncos have, and also the rookie quarterback contract. It gives you so you can spend a little bit extra in areas where typically you wouldn't. So Joe Schobert, I think adding speed, adding coverage to that middle of the defense, somebody that would make sense there. So again, we're talking day one. It has to be a splash signing. So that would be one that would interest me.
Do you like Schobert or Littleton more?
I prefer Schobert because I think he brings more dynamic ability as far as not only is he a good coverage player, I think he's also a little bit better against the run, but he's a really good blitzer. He actually kind of played a kind of a hybrid edge / off-ball player at Wisconsin. So he has a knack for finding gaps, finding holes, and that ability, I think just the confusion, bringing guys, that extra tool that he possesses is enough of a differentiator for me. Okay. So that's my take. I know that Littleton has been a really good coverage player, though. So I could see either of them. I just think that Schobert's going to be the guy. There's just a little bit of smoke there. So we'll see. If not, it's probably Nick Kwiatkowski. Hopefully I said that right. But we'll see. Again, we're talking day one, so that changes things.
Right.
So moving along now, we got the Philip Miller here with the main talent of our front seven on the edges, a nose tackle that can penetrate, could change our defense. I've heard DJ Reader rumors, but who else might be looking at in free agency now or later? So actually the next guys on my list here, I'm just going to read off almost all of these players that I have on this buy or sell are interior defensive line. When John Elway and Vic Fangio at the Combine said this interior defensive line group is incredibly talented, he was not lying. So the names I have listed here: Eric Armstead, DJ Reader, Javon Hargrave, Leonard Williams, Derek Wolfe, Shelby Harris, Jordan Phillips, Michael Pierce, and Michael Brockers. So that is, that's 9 guys there. All 9 of 25 that I wrote out that makes sense for the Broncos. That could be ones that they target. So all in all, I would love to get Eric Armstead, Leonard Williams. I think both those guys are going to be making more money than the Broncos are willing to pay. 15.6 for Armstead projected. Leonard's only at 8.2. I hear he's looking for about 15 to 16. So we'll see about
that's
that.
Not happening. Yeah, that's not happening.
But DJ Reader, 11.9 APY. You don't love to see that for a nose tackle, but one thing I think that needs to be spoken about with DJ Reader is he's not just a nose tackle. He's played 5 technique. He's played 3 technique. He's going to play whatever formation that you have out there so you can get the best semblance of defensive linemen out there. So I love the versatility, and he's equally good at pressuring the quarterback as he is rushing the passer. And I believe he was Pro Football Focus's most underrated signing at the interior defensive line this year. Let's see what they said. First, they said the most overrated is Jordan Phillips. Some will point out to Phillips' 9.5 sacks as evidence of solid pass rush skills for a man of his size, but those sacks represent 10 of just 25 pressures on the season, which is not good. And frankly, if you run through the Bills tape and look at them, you'll be far from impressed by those sacks. Phillips has never earned an PFF grade north of 60 for a season and has yet to clear 30 pressures in 16-game season. Not good. However, the underrated player, DJ Reader. Reader stepped into an expanded role in 2019 and showed he could be more than just a run stuffer north of 340 pounds. Reader played more pass rushing snaps than ever before and responded by notching 35 total pressures, 11 more than his previous career highs. Reader also made more plays overall. He bettered his previous career high in defensive stops by 9 and earned his best PFF career grade of 85.5. So Reader's projected salary is 11.9 APY, 5 years, $60 million. I am a little bit worried about the 340 at his size at altitude, but honestly, his versatility, his size, his ability to two-gap, his ability to push the pocket, he's one that just makes a heck of a lot of sense. And now that the Chris Jones dream has died, probably that's the guy that makes the most sense for me.
Right. Well, and I was talking to somebody, I can't remember who it was, but they said DJ Reader actually got better when JJ Watt went down and he started playing a lot more defensive end than nose tackle. His pass rush ability started really improving when he had that kind of opportunity to move a little more outside.
He wasn't just asked to eat blocks.
Yeah. And he would be probably the one guy I'm thinking, like I said, day one, that makes a lot of sense, that I think would be a really good signing for the Broncos and can come in and be a contributor both in the run and the pass, which is something that Fangio really likes about defense linemen. He likes those big boys. He likes them that 300 to 320 to 330 pounds. And that's why, like somebody had talked about, like Malik Collins earlier, he's a little bit on the short side. He's 6'2", about 305 pounds, something like that. So I just kind of wonder, I think the Broncos are going to be looking for more guys that offer good overall versatility because they have those young guys that can get after the quarterback already. So they need more of those guys that can come in and actually help in the run game and be contributors in the pass game if need be. And so that's kind of where I'm leaning when I'm looking at the defensive linemen that are going to be available. And I did see somebody earlier had talked about trading like a 5th and 7th round pick for Calais Campbell.
I got it right here from Bill 1293. Buy or sell, trading a 5 and a 7 for Calais Campbell would have a 1 year, $15 million cap hit. I think I love the trade price. However, the $15 million cap hit is massive, and that scares me. So could you bring him in and renegotiate that and add on a couple years and, make it closer to a $11 to $12 million cap hit? Then I'd be interested. But at $15 million cap hit, you're talking about all those savings and the cap space that you have, poof, gone by adding 2 Jags players.
Yep. No, I'm with you. I did just want to get this one just because it's personal to me. Awesome. Thanks, man. I'm in seminary in Kansas City, so was just curious. Hey, that's awesome, man. And I've heard really good things about the one in Kansas City. So if you're going to the one I'm thinking about. But anyway, back to football. Sorry, I just had to get that real quick.
I got one here from George Fox on Facebook. Do you see any good linebackers in the draft for the Broncos? So I think it's a pretty darn good linebacker class, at least in the top 120. I'm not an advocate of taking a linebacker round 1 unless you're listing Isaiah Simmons as a linebacker, in which case we can have that discussion. But Kenneth Murray, Patrick Queen, you miss me with those guys round 1. But after that, I mean, Troy Dye is a really interesting player, good coverage player, good athleticism. Played this last year, I believe, with a broken thumb and a torn meniscus. So there's some toughness there, which really intrigues me. A long player as well. Akeem Davis-Gaither is another one from Appalachian State. I really like that linebacker / nickel player from Colorado in Davian Taylor, a really interesting player. There's some linebacker safety hybrids such as Kyle Duggar, Jeremy Chin that interest me a lot. If they are there round 3, they might play themselves in round 2 after the combine. A guy like Malik Harrison interests me a lot out of Ohio State. Marcus Bailey from Purdue, if his medicals are fine, maybe round 4. He's somebody who, it's the Jake Butt syndrome. If he didn't have that injury, he'd have been going in the top 50. But because of the injury, you're adding risk. So I know that's going to make a lot of people scared. But again, you're talking about a day 3 pick. The odds of that hitting anyway are, pretty slim. So, you're just adding. There's a reason that he's there round 4, considering the talent, the tape he's put out. So will be interesting there. So Carl, I guess back to some of these defensive line free agents here. Eric Armstead, 15.6 APY, buy or sell?
That's what I'm torn on.
Okay. That's an expensive one. That's more than Byron Jones is projected at, according to them.
Right. But he's pretty good against the run. He's not great at it, but he's pretty good. His win rate as a pass rusher, 12.3%. Now, given 49ers were playing with the lead a lot, he also had elite pass rushers around him that gave him one-on-one opportunities. But hey, he's coming to Denver where there's 2 elite pass rushers that take pressure off of him so he can go win one-on-one battles. I do feel like he made one really, really stupid play in the Super Bowl where he gave up the edge on one of the big plays for Kansas City. And, they had him. They had Mahomes dead to rights, and all of a sudden Armstead cuts inside. And so that rubbed me the wrong way, and it just makes me – I'd probably sell. There's other guys – if you can get like a DJ Reader and
Derek Wolfe.
Yeah, Derek Wolfe for the same price as what you'd be paying Eric Armstead, I'm all for that. I'll take that all day, every day. This is something you and I were talking about earlier today of how should the Broncos go about this, of getting, like, say, 3 really big names and calling it a day, spending all their cap on that and signing Justin Sims. So I guess it'd be 4 big names. Or should they spread it out and say get 8 medium names and really fill out the depth of this roster? I'm more leaning towards the depth of the roster. Just that was something that we saw last year with injuries where the team just really took a hit big time when some of the injuries started showing up, especially in the secondary. And so I just would like to see this team get a little bit deeper where they can spread things out a little bit more, that they can do a little bit more of some snap count consideration, especially if the NFL is going to be going to 17 games. We'll see how that ends up playing out. But you do see the teams that end up having some of the better depth are the ones that can survive and make it into the playoffs.
Yeah, you're right. I think depth is super important, especially on defense. So a couple other names here on the interior defensive line before we move out here. Jordan Phillips, a guy that Pro Football Focus says is overrated, but Spot Track has him only at $6.1 million a year. So 3 years, $18.5 million. I'd be interested in that. Another name connected to the Broncos is Michael Pierce, only $4.7 per year, 2 years, $9.5 million. If they miss out on a DJ Reader, I would be I think they'll shift their focus to Michael Pierce. So both those guys would be interesting to me at the right price. And I think what Spot Track has him listed as is a very good price.
Yeah, I'm with you. One thing that really stuck out to me, he had of all the defensive linemen you've listed here, he has the worst pass rush ability of all of them, at least since last year. Only won 5.5% of the time of getting pressure on a quarterback. And that was with a pretty good defense that he was surrounded by. And so it's not something I'd be all that interested in unless he's like that second, third wave kind of free agent that you sign that's more there to help in the run game. But even there, I'm a little torn just because I feel like they did okay in that area last year.
Yeah. So we probably should clear out some of these questions here. Yanis Hirachi, we're Facebook friends, so how you doing, Yanis? There's a mock up by Pro Football Focus that has the Broncos picking Justin Jefferson from LSU at 15, even though Diggs and Henderson were still on the table. Is that a move you would like? This is an analytical-based draft, which was very odd. You didn't see a quarterback come off the board until the 5th overall pick, so it was, or maybe I'm mixing up the mocks there. I'm thinking of the Cynthia Freuland mock. But either way, this was an odd mock. It had wide receivers going off the board like crazy. I know that Henry Ruggs was projected 4th overall on this mock to the Giants and Jerry Jeudy 8th to the Cardinals. So Justin Jefferson, this was a weird mock. They definitely prioritized wide receivers higher than the Broncos. So I don't love that pick of Justin Jefferson, a guy who's going to operate mostly in the middle of the field, the slot, an area where you'd like to see Hamilton / Noah Fant tend to dominate and that be their niche. But with how that mock was, I understand it. Their analytics tend to favor the WAR and the output of wide receivers. So wide receivers got a bump.
Yeah, I don't mind Justin Jefferson.
Yeah. He's
more of a, maybe if he's there in the second round kind of guy to me.
I don't think after his combine he will be.
I know, but if that's where he falls in that middle ground for me.
Same tier as Rager and Mims.
Yep. Exactly.
So after the big three. So interesting player there. So here's one, Jody Moncrief. We've had some interactions on Facebook before. No wide receiver at 15. Get you the LT you want. Andrew Thomas. Chat, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. Andrew Thomas is probably the tackle of the big four I like the least. I think he's got the least movement skills. He's a guy, I don't think he has great balance. He is long, but I'm looking for a left tackle that projects as a blindside blocker, specifically in the pass game. If you can get some movement in the run game, la-di-da, go play in 1990. I'm sorry to be rough on that one, but the game's changed. So I think Andrew Thomas he's more hyped up because he went to Georgia and people knew about him coming into the season. But I would definitely take Mekhi Becton, even though he has a much lower floor. I would take Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs, and Jedrick Wills before Andrew Thomas. I think that he's closer to the Josh Joneses, the Austin Jacksons, and the Ezra Clevelands than the other guys. But I tend to be more alone on that than against other analysts out there.
Right. And this idea of no wide receiver in the first round, because there's going to be great guys there in the second round. Like, you're right. There might be a Rager, a Mims, one of those guys that might be
Jefferson.
there in the second. Yeah, Jefferson. I was almost say Hamilton, but there's still a huge difference between them and a Ruggs, Lamb, and Jeudy. I mean, and if you wait too long, you're just going to miss out on too much talent. And right now, this offense, they need a huge burst of talent. You got a young quarterback. You got to give him an opportunity to succeed. And if you go back out there this next year with Sutton and Hamilton as your number 2, I'm sorry, that's not a good look. That's not telling your quarterback that you believe in him. And so for me,
him.
Right, exactly. And so for me, if they miss out on one of the top 3 wide receivers, then maybe somebody there in the second. That's fine by me too, if that's what ends up happening. But you don't want to reach for a guy, obviously, especially in a deep wide receiver draft. You definitely don't reach at that position. But at the same time, if you got a chance at an A-plus player that you think is going to be there long-term for your franchise and allows you to really microwave the development of your quarterback, I'm sorry, you don't pass on that. At least not me. Yeah, I think you start getting too too nitpicky when you start really trying to figure out value and all those kind of things. You just take talent, and then you kind of figure out things from there. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
So speaking about getting cute, I have no idea. I guess Jody Moncrief in the cute picture of his daughter/granddaughter there. I can't tell your age there, Jody. But Nick and Carl, I'll extend that to you. Roby Anderson or Randall Cobb? I would probably go Randall Cobb, even though I think the skill set that Roby Anderson brings is more valuable. I just think you can get Randall Cobb for half the price.
Right. And he offers a few different things that he can bring to the field.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind that. I did want to get to Paul's a new question from Paul. Thank you, Paul. I really appreciate it. No free agent running back. I know there's information that came out. The Broncos are interested in Jordan Howard today. I know I've seen some people really pounding the table for getting Derrick Henry. I'm with you. I'm sorry. Go to the draft. If you really want a running back and not in the first 2 rounds. I know there's some there in the first 2 rounds that some people really like. I still, any draft that people send me that has a running back in the second round.
I'm that gif with Julius Caesar. Just thumbs down. So doing hand gestures is really great for the podcast because everybody can see what I'm doing.
Right. And don't want free agent wide receiver either. Stay cheap and young on while Locke is learning. The second part there, I'd maybe disagree a little bit with you, Paul. It all depends on price. Because I do think the Broncos need 2 wide receivers, and depending on 2 rookies to come in and be high contributors right off the bat, that's asking a lot. And so if you can go get a proven wide receiver like a Perryman that can be that deep threat option, and he's in that 7 to 8 million area, I'm not going to complain too much. It's not going to be my favorite signing by any means, but it's also not going to be something I'm going to sit there and go, oh my gosh, what were they thinking? I know that this is a great draft for also finding a running back. I think there are some pretty good names out there that will be available, but it does also help having veterans to help the young guy instead of the rookies trying to learn the playbook and have everything swirling around them and them messing up, not knowing what they're supposed to be doing. It's kind of nice for the quarterback to have a guy he knows he can trust to be where he needs to be. Yeah,
definitely agree with you there. So Gary Turks now with a question. What do you know about safety Jeremy Chin? So interesting pick there, Gary. I better say something good about Jeremy Chin. Jeremy Chin is related to Steve Young, or excuse me, Steve Atwater.
Yep.
Yeah, excuse me, Steve Young. So that is obviously bloodlines there, which matters to NFL teams. Maybe it shouldn't, but it does. And I really love his versatility. I know that Isaiah Simmons is the player that everybody's going goo goo gaga over as far as the versatility, but if you can't get yourself Isaiah Simmons round 1, Jeremy Chin round 2 is not a bad look. I know that some people like Kyle Duggar more, but Kyle Duggar is 24 years old compared to Jeremy Chin being 22 years old. Jeremy Chin is bigger and a better athlete. So honestly, I'd probably take the flyer on Chin. I think he's probably got more upside with those metrics there. And the age stuff does matter there. So I really like Chin. Unfortunately, I think he's going to go probably in between the Broncos' 2nd and 3rd round picks. Yeah. So probably too early for the Broncos to go around there. But yeah.
Yeah. I thought this was kind of a neat one, just talking about draft and kind of looking back. Timothy Hawkinson talking about Jake Butt, if not injured, being top 10 pick. Well, that hasn't worked out so well.
He wouldn't have been a top 10 pick. He'd have been a round 2 player because
right.
He doesn't offer that vertical element. I mean, Noah Fant's, way better athlete and upside in the passing game, and he fell all the way to 20. So
right.
Jake Butt would have gone round 2.
But I did just want to point out, this is why teams worry about those injuries. If you have injuries in college, there's a pretty good chance you're going to have injuries in the NFL. Like, that doesn't get better usually. There's been very few players that all of a sudden went from injury prone in college to all of a sudden the, perfect attendance in games kind of guy. So it's a nice thought, but it's, that's why he fell that far, and it's proven out. The Broncos took a chance, and 5th round, that's where you start taking some real risk. Really 3rd round on, you're willing to take a lot of risk and hoping that you just hit that one home run, diamond in the rough kind of player, and just hope that it works out for you.
Outside the top 100, it is lottery ticket. So that one won't go away, Carl. Don't worry about it. I figured that out last time. But we have a question here about Graham Glasgow. I guess now's the time to talk about some of these offensive linemen here. So I have Joe Thuney as the first one here. SpotTrack has him projected at 13.9 APY. It sounds like it's going to be higher now that Brandon Scherf is off the market. So, but 13.9 APY, buy, sell on Joe Thuney. Personally, I'm going to sell.
Yeah.
It's too much.
That's too much. There are some other names like a Graham Glasgow that I think, while they're not as good, they're still pretty darn good.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And Graham Glasgow, he's projected, let me see where it was, 11 APY, 4 years, 44 million. I think compared to the 15 that Thuney is probably going to get, I would be more interested in Graham Glasgow. He has center, he has guard experience. But honestly, if Connor McGovern's making 7 or 8, I'd be interested in bringing him back. SpotTrack has him at 9.9. The center market is dreadful, so he might actually get that 9.9. But there's a reason the Broncos have actually been putting out, word via their mouthpieces that, don't sleep on Connor McGovern just yet. We're still kind of interested there. I think that maybe there's a little bit more chance there than we thought heading into the offseason.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to see how that all plays out. I don't think they're going to get too crazy. I think they'll make some calls and they'll just kind of see, hey, what are you getting offered? And then kind of make a decision from there. But if things get too crazy, there's no reason to get too crazy either. I mean, this is why you have Mike Munchak.
Yep. And
you brought him in to develop people. Yep, exactly. All right. Get to Terry Randall here. I love the picture, of course, with the huddle up picture. Speed in the draft. Dig the clips, Carl, but this is for Nick's Beer Fund. State of
I'm drinking water today, guys. I'm boring. I got my Hydro Flask here, so I'm trying to load up to lower on the calories. But
my usual water as well.
Mason jar. You're a little bit less fancy, bare bones than I am there with the brand going on there. But but yeah, no. Thank you very much, Terry. We really appreciate obviously the picture there at the Huddle Up podcast and OG. And again, you're a super chat superstar to me. So again, some of these more players here about I guess we were talking about it earlier. Buy, sell. Personally, before we even get into it, running backs, I sell all the way on running backs. However, there is one here that interests me. So Derrick Henry projected $13.8 million a year at running back for 4 year, $55 million. I'm not only out, I am all the way out. A guy that I know that what he brings is dynamic, but you have to build the entire offense around what he does. And I'm sorry, I cannot bring myself to be limited in that regard. A power run game, you limit yourself so much when pass game is so much more explosive today. So heck no. $14 million a year, heck no.
Yeah, and I'm not sure of how great of a fit he is with Shermer. Because, I mean, when he wants to get into those big boxes, pound between the tackles, where Shermer wants to spread things out, get to the edges, those kind of things. And then I did want to add this because Paul was kind of adding this to his question earlier. Okay. I'm thinking 20 is another learning year. The two rookies could take a huge step like Sutton in 21 and add a vet in 21 if one pulls a Hamilton, use money on front 7. Okay.
It just depends on opportunity. Who becomes available. You put out a bunch of feelers, and let's say, Brashad Perryman, a guy that you kind of like, he's willing to take $7 million for 2 years. Well, am I going to turn down that opportunity because I'm, have a strict focus on the front 7? Probably not.
Yeah.
So it just depends on, what those feelers, what kind of bites you get on return. So,
right.
But I don't hate the theory.
Yeah. I guess I'm just kind of hoping to microwave Drew Lock as much as you can. Because like I said, you got a 3-year window, and it might even be 2 years if he wants to go get paid after that third season kind of thing, if he goes out there and has an outstanding season. So I'm trying to do as much possible to make 2021 and 2022 as productive as possible, because it is, once you pay that quarterback, good luck. Yeah. It just, unless you have one of those top 5 guys, it's going to be tough to really compete every single season.
Yeah. Glad we don't have to worry about that for a couple seasons in regard to that tough question. But some more running backs here. Melvin Gordon, somebody the Broncos have been linked to, $8.3 million a year, 4 year, $33 million. Heck, I think Austin Eckler is the more valuable back there at the Chargers. But again, I am very much # running backs don't matter. And if I can get any value from them, it's in the pass game. So I'm not paying 8.3 anything for Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, it would take him taking pretty low deal. And he's probably going to get a pretty low deal compared to what he could have. I don't know. this is the problem for running backs. They're just not getting the contracts they think they should, unless you are that top 2 or 3 guy at the position, which I do think somebody's going to pay Derrick Henry, probably Tennessee. And it makes sense. I mean, he is a huge part of their offense, and he is one of the few guys that really makes his own offense in a sense. I still don't think he's worth what they're saying here by any means, but yeah, I'm not with it.
Yeah. And the next guy here, interesting. And this one actually, just because the projected yearly salary was close enough, Kenyon Drake, who is really good for the Arizona Cardinals down the stretch last year, $5.5 million a year, $4 million, $22 million. So Kenyon Drake, because of his ability in the pass game, he's one that actually gives me pause. Because, I mean, obviously, again, if you're trying to surround it, they wanted Theo Riddick last year. Kenyon Drake's younger, has more of a dynamic skill set. I still probably sell because I am pretty strict on not paying running backs if I can't help it. And I'm thinking if I was the John Elway, I'd want to be paying Phillip Lindsay a deal now, lower that cap hit down the line and give him some of that extra cap savings they have right now, reward the guy. But honestly, Kenyon Drake for 5.5, that one is one I'd consider.
And seen a lot of haircut messages come in here. Yes, I did get my haircuts. If I had it my way, I would be taking it down to the scalp because I hate dealing with my hair. I don't mind the beard, but the hair up here, I always say I get a haircut when I have to start combing it. That's the point I've reached. I'm about comfort, not style. So I appreciate that you guys think it looks good. It is style. This isn't how it usually looks.
And I've gotten to the point where I have some friends that are starting to thin out and lose hair. So I'm trying to show a little bit of flow there going on.
There you go.
So if you got it. Flaunt it.
I know that's my wife. She always says, someday you're going to wish that you had hair. So enjoy it while you do.
Yeah. Then it starts going on your chest and your back and your rear end. So that's not the best.
Yeah.
But okay. And so any of those running backs there, did they interest you?
Oh, you're right. Drake probably the most, just because he's probably going to be the cheapest of them, and like I said, helps in the pass game. I do think he fits well within the system as a running back as well, because of his explosiveness that he brings to the table. That if you got things spread out and you give him that little bit of a hole, it's amazing what that guy could do in the open field. So I wouldn't mind. I would mind. I don't want any of them. Like you said, I'd rather pay Phillip Lindsay a little bit more just to make him a little bit happy, because he has been a very productive back for the running backs, and just kind of keep them interested, and then have a nice counter player to go with him, either through the draft or really cheap free agent kind of thing.
The Stephen Ridleys of the world, the veteran minimum kinds.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. And okay, the last two I got here. Actually, I meant to move this guy up earlier, but Jarran Reed had a really good year 2 seasons ago, got busted for PEDs, missed 6 games last year. But I mean, a guy who fits the scheme, can 2 gap, 1 gap, 10.6 APY. Maybe that's a little bit high for me. If you bump that down to like 9.5 to 10, I'd be interested. 10 points. I'm just trying to squeeze out value. But Jarran Reed, I think, is a kind of a sleeper right now for the Broncos in regards to the scheme fit.
Yeah, I think he could be a buy low, sell high kind of guy. Because like you said, with getting busted, with getting suspended, all those kind of things, teams are going to be a little bit leery about signing him to a big deal. And so if you can make a deal where it is kind of incentive based, yeah, he's one I wouldn't mind one bit. I love his game. I think he'd be a great fit in the system. He has the size, he has the strength, he's got ability to shed blocks, all those kind of things, everything you're looking for. I definitely wouldn't mind that signing one bit. But
Carl, Elway doesn't do Alabama guys.
What? Oh, yeah, that's true. Never mind. All right, scratch that.
Sorry, Kareem. We've just found out you're from Alabama. So back to the questions here. Frank Lucro here asks us, how do you feel about Chase Claypool, wide receiver / tight end from Notre Dame? I like Chase Claypool a fair amount. I do not see a player on tape that separates vertically, despite the testing numbers against cornerbacks. He has a really hard time when he gets redirected from press coverage, and that kind of tends to lose him some momentum. So why not just move him to be a flex tight end? He's got the Evan Ingram body type. Don't play him on the boundary. Just let him be that big tight end. He could be one of the better tight ends in this class too. It's a butt cheeks tight end class. Pardon my language there, Carl. I know you're a man of the cloth, but I think, with the game becoming even more pass heavy and tight ends becoming these big wide receivers, getting a guy like Claypool, the Darren Waller effect, who played wide receiver for Georgia Tech, I think that makes a lot of sense. But I guess his value, because it is a one tight end system for the Broncos, mostly a lot of 11 personnel, I think that Claypool will probably be valued higher by other teams than the Broncos. I'd be looking at him with that round 4 pick just because the upside is there to be an interesting weapon, but I think somebody's going to end up taking him in the top 100 that will value him more than I will for where the Broncos are right now.
Yeah. Like you said, there are guys who tested really well at the combine who, when you actually put on the tape, you don't see it as much. I'm thinking of, I'm going to butcher this name, Albert
Obuekanam.
There you go. That's why I have you here, man. But he's not a 4 or 5 guy on tape.
He's stiff.
Straight line, maybe he does pretty well at that. But if you ask him to turn one bit, even just an inch, he loses all momentum. And I know everybody keeps talking about reuniting him with Drew Lock. I don't want it. Like I said, it's a one tight end system, so I feel like it would be a little bit of a wasted pick at that point. And same with Chase Claypool. He's kind of that hybrid player. How do you use him? I think if he's there in the mid rounds, I'm not saying don't go take him. It's not going to be my favorite player that they can take.
Yeah. So total shot in the dark here from Sterling, but he said I got the last name right. So you're welcome. Don't expect me to do it again. That's hence why I said only Sterling that time, because I'm not going to chance it. But we appreciate you coming on here, man. We appreciate everybody coming on and commenting and everything like that.
Yeah.
So interesting comment. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we got even from Canada coming in. Appreciate it. Mile High 6 Sports. Really appreciate it.
I'm a big fan of Maple, so keep doing what you're doing. JP Wyafi here. From what I gather, the only realistic way what I see the Denver getting a top wide receiver in the first is if they trade up to 10 or 11 at the least. If that's the way it falls, that's the way it falls. You're pushing down a tackle or a defensive player or a quarterback down to 15. And I'm not advocating for a quarterback, but if a quarterback falls to 15, you have an option to trade down. You can get some capital. Maybe there's a team that wants Justin Herbert, Jordan Love. So I guess it comes down to the cost. I'd be interested in calling up. It does sound like the Jets and the Raiders are, as the closer we get to the draft, the more it sounds like both those teams really like Ruggs. So if Ruggs is the guy for the Broncos, maybe you do need to get up to 10. But at that point, maybe you should just go up there and get Tristan Wirfs. But that's just me being biased. But it'll be interesting to see how it falls. Shout out here to CH Draft Scouting, a friend of the pod, good guy on Twitter. Give him a follow if you haven't yet, if you're a draft fan.
Yeah. I still think a wide receiver is going to be there, one of the 3.
Yeah. And if just not, because Eric Brown, Javon Kinlaw,
somebody's going to fall. That's worth drafting. That's kind of the nice, right. That's the nice thing about where the Broncos are, is they can sit there and wait for a guy to fall to them and then kind of rework their board depending on what position they take there in the first. So
also worth noting that teams above the Broncos may be more inclined to trade with them because they're at 15 rather than the Eagles, who are at 21, or the Cowboys, who are at 17, because there does seem to be a talent drop off after 16 or 17. That's where you start getting to like Jeff Gladney, Xavier McKinney kind of range, where it doesn't fit as well. So I guess you can toss in CJ Henderson with those top 16 now. So there are going to be teams that are looking to trade back. I think it was a few years ago with the Colts and the Jets, where the Colts didn't want to trade out of the top 10. They wanted to still remain in the top 7 because they had a specific number of players in mind. So they moved down from 3 to 6 with the Jets and the Colts. And that could be the case with the Broncos this year. They're at a good spot the way this draft is shaping up, because there's going to be teams, let's say the Browns. Well, we don't really want to fall. We have 15 first-round picks as far as the grades go. There's not 32 graded first-round players every year. That's just, the numbers don't add up that way. Yeah. Well, then I'm going to be more interested in trading back with the Broncos than, say, the Eagles, because I can still get one of those players in that range. So it's it's a good spot to be.
Chris Orme, a lot of players tested well but had bad tape, and a lot of them had great tape but underwhelmed at the combine drills. I'm unsure which way to lean on them now. Trust the tape.
Trust the tape. Combine metrics like that should only be about 5 to 10% of your evaluation, and it comes in handy if you have tiebreakers. Like, let's say you had, AJ Epinesa and Caleb Von Chason really close at edge rusher, and Caleb Von Chason didn't test, but AJ Epinesa did not test well. That could be enough of a differentiator between those two teams. That's stuff that Daniel Jeremiah and others who have worked in, Matt Williamson, guys who have worked in front offices, have said about the combine, where the metrics matter, the interview matters more, the medicals matter the most, but the thing that they are looking for is differentiators between tiebreakers. So,
all right, we'll get to a couple more questions and we'll get out of here real quick. One was Cam Akers tape looks good from Black Knight 232. I've seen a couple people talk about him on here. I think Paul had another one as well. That's one of my guys. They're in the third round. If he's there, I wouldn't mind him one bit. I keep saying it's not that you're trying to find a Royce Freeman, be able to pound it between the tackles kind of guy. It's more that you're trying to find a true pass catching option. Now, Philip Lindsay can improve as a pass catching option and work on route running, all those kind of things. But there are those guys that it's just natural to what they do. It's kind of like wide receivers. You can work on your hands, but there are just certain guys that they just have natural hands. And Cam Akers, I think he would be I think he's just a natural runner. He's very, very fluid. He knows how to make guys miss in the open field or behind the line of scrimmage. I saw somebody say something about when he has his first 10-yard run, he should celebrate that he didn't get hit in the backfield. That's pretty much how it's been. And kind of, could Akers drop to the fourth? Yeah. I mean, running back is getting devalued, so teams are willing to wait on those a little bit. But if that guy's there, third, fourth round, I don't mind that. There's a couple other guys that I don't mind either. But that's where I would be looking, is a pass catching option that can help really round out this offense.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. So he'd be an interesting one here. I see a lot of comments from Jody. Actually, there was one, I think I lost it. It's up here now a ways, but he said that Henry Ruggs is not a good route runner. And Carl, I just want you, the wide receiver guy yourself, expand upon that. We want to get Brad Kelly on the podcast. That kind of fell through. He's a wide receiver coach and wide receiver analyst expert, but I guess fight that narrative. Why isn't Henry Ruggs just a speedster? Why is he not John Ross, which this 104 point, should give them free publicity.
Yeah.
But their narrative, which is just phooey.
Okay. So yes, he is not Jerry Jeudy. And I think that's part of the problem is people watch. I fell into this myself. I watch Jerry Jeudy and see that there's plays where he's 5 yards down the field and Henry Ruggs is still at the line of scrimmage. Jerry Jeudy is a unicorn when it comes to route running. You just don't see that in college. Now, Henry Ruggs, he is not a perfect route runner by any means. He still has some work to do with learning how to fight with his hands, how not to sit there and just chop at the line of scrimmage, hoping that he's going to fake the guy out or something like that, because you take too long. In the NFL, you got 2-3 seconds to really get yourself open. But Henry Ruggs still is a pretty darn good route runner. He's the nice thing about him is when he's making a cut, he doesn't lose as much speed as a lot of those other really fast guys. I mean, we just talked about it with Albert from Missouri, where straight line, maybe, he is a 4-5 guy, but you ask him to cut 1 inch, the guy's done. Henry is not that way. That's why a lot of his actual big plays were not deep passes down the field. It was him winning with a slant route, an in route, screen pass. They asked him to do a lot more at Alabama than people realize. They didn't just say, Ruggs, run deep. And so he is young. And like I said, he is not a perfect route runner by any means, but you can see the improvement from 2018 to 2019. You can see that this is something that he's been working on. And when you combine that with the fact of his speed, it just makes it that much more. I watched a video where he did, I'm trying to remember the name of the route, but it's kind of an out, in, and then out again. I can't remember the name of the route all of a sudden. Anyway, he had perfect footing. A lot of guys, they'll do chops at each spot, and that causes them to lose speed. It makes the defender be able to catch back up. His was just cut off that left foot when he's cutting out, cut off that right foot when he's cutting in, and boom, he's got himself about 3 or 4 yards of separation, and then he just kept separating more as he kept going. And so you see the signs there that this guy has the ability to be a good route runner. And if he works at his craft, he could become one of the 5 deadliest weapons in football.
And a lot of people talk about him just being a speed guy, but he's so much more than that. He's a yak guy. He's really tough over the middle. He only had one drop ball over the past few seasons. And, you can play him in the slot, but Jerry Jeudy was best in the slot, and you're going to get more value from him on the boundary. I'm sorry, just slot players do not have the same value as boundary players who have better average distance of target. So the guys who can make plays down the field matter more. So I know that you can probably get yourself Roby Anderson, but Roby Anderson is a 9 or nothing guy. He runs a fly route. Okay, cool. They know what's coming on. But you have slant and goes with Ruggs. You have bubble screens. You have a multitude of routes. You have drags where he can win in a lot of different ways. So I think he's so much more dynamic than any other pure speed option in this class. He's much more than a speed guy.
And he fights for the ball. You see it especially in his run blocking. This guy's not afraid to mix it up with people. He's got big hands. 10.25 inch hands, I think is what it was, or something like 91st
that. 91st percentile of all wide receivers.
For a guy his size, that's huge mitts. And so he's going to go up there. He's going to make plays because there was a lot of throws. He was open deep and Tua underthrew him. And he had
Jerry Jeudy's open. The first read is Jerry Jeudy. And you have on the backside, because Tua is a left-handed quarterback, Ruggs almost exclusively line up on the right side. Ruggs a lot of times was clearing things out, getting space where you watch the all-22. Again, check out Brad Kelly's YouTube. You can watch the all-22 from above. So you don't see him off the screen like, oh, I can't evaluate that anymore. You can see everybody out there. Yep. And Ruggs is open. And he's a deeper play. But again, Alabama's up by 30 points.
Right.
You're running the ball through the air, essentially, giving it to Jerry Jeudy. So
right. And Tua's he's not a deep ball thrower. He had a better deep ball. Yeah, his arm talent is not off the charts.
I would have loved to have seen Henry Ruggs with Justin Herbert and a better offense, not that bubble screen BS. But we got a couple guys. We got to get out of here soon, otherwise Chad's going to get mad at us.
Yeah, I wanted to get to this.
James Dean. I love your breakfast foods.
Out of all the top prospects, who has the greatest bust potential? Sorry, I've been cooking and listening. Are you making some breakfast food, man? All right.
Non-quarterbacks. Let's do non-quarterbacks because quarterbacks, Tua Tagovailoa with the injuries, highest bust potential, I'd say. But for non-quarterbacks, because that's a totally different thing, you have to evaluate them totally differently. I would go with Mekhi Becton. I think that Mekhi Becton, his traits are massive. His tools, his size, all of it's incredible. The technique is inconsistent. And a guy that size, it just scares me. So I think he's got a much lower floor than a lot of these other guys at the top. Other than that, I think I'd have to go with Javon Kinlaw because of the knee. If he has a degenerative knee issue, and then, can you call that a bust? I guess there's different definitions of bust, but that would concern me the most, those two.
Right. Well, and Kinlaw's tape, like he has wins, but it's not always a finished win. Mm-hmm. And so he's not close to being a finished product.
Yeah.
He has to work at his game to reach being a true first-round talent. He has the potential. That's why we're talking about potential here. He has the ability to be a top 5 player in this draft for sure. But he could be the next Chris Jones. But it's still, he's got a lot further to go than, say, a Derek Brown. Like Derek Brown, I think, is one of the most risk-adverse players in this draft. He's going to be a great run stopper no matter what. I think he's going to be a pretty good getting after the quarterback. Not great, but he's going to be good at it. He's got a lot of experience, all that kind of stuff.
Isn't Jimmy
Jimmy
short
Dean.
for James? But isn't that short for James? Maybe I'm off there. But we have one more question here from Killa Kem. How you doing, Killa? What do you see the Broncos doing at middle linebacker? I think that's a real need. It does sound like the Broncos are going to look to attack the middle linebacker in free agency. If not, there's a lot of options day 2 in the draft that they could look at. There's Troy Dye we talked about earlier. Logan Wilson from Wyoming's an interesting guy. Carter Coughlin's transitioning. Josh Uche from Michigan is transitioning from an edge to kind of an off ball. Same with Zach Bond. Those guys are all interesting. Akeem Davis-Gaither, Malik Harrison. There's a lot of good names day 2 in this class for linebacker. So that would all really interest me.
Yeah. Killa,
excuse me.
Yeah.
Killa Keem. So, all right. Well, guys, hate to do this to you, but anything over an hour and Chad starts, I bet you I have 10 messages right now saying, hey guys, wrap it up. So I got to get going. Want to thank you all so much for joining us today on here. Shout out to Hand Soap and everybody out there not buying up all the toilet paper. You guys are the real MVPs. Obviously this COVID-19 is serious stuff. But again, if you are smart and you're practicing self-quarantine and washing your hands and everything like that, we're going to get through this. So just don't panic. I think that's the biggest thing. And listen to the CDC, listen to doctors, don't listen to politicians. I guess that should be true in everything in life, but whatever. That's a whole different discussion there. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself and at Kendell MHH. Make sure you head on over to milehighhuddle.com. I just had an article come out today about how AJ Boye cannot be the only move the Broncos make in the defensive backfield this year if they want to contend with the Chiefs, based on some findings from Pro Football Focus and some of their recent analytical studies. Go to iTunes, guys. Leave us a 5-star rating and a comment, because your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. Follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. Again, guys, if we didn't get to any of your comments on here, please make sure you add us on Twitter. I know that these things can fly by. We probably had 1,000 comments today in the chat, but we really appreciate you guys. So just, again, here's our Twitter handles. Find us on there. And what round would COVID-19 be picked at? Unstoppable force, but maybe a little bit overrated. But really appreciate you guys. We'll see you again next week, same time. So, until next time, that's it for Building the Broncos. Go Broncos.